Hi everyone, it's Knife522 here. I hope you guys are all well. Welcome to my next defense in the series called the Semi-Slav defense, which is a very effective way to defend against the d4 opening and the Queen's Gambit opening. So it is a variation of the Queen's Gambit declined, and this is what the position looked like. You'll see this in all levels of play. It's a very decent opening, and it's got some good statistics. I don't currently have them with me, but I can put them in the description if anybody asks. But yeah, it's very good statistics. This is the actual position, which sets out the Semi-Slav, decent for both sides. But let's go over how we reach this position, and then we will go over how to play the Semi-Slav, and some of the variations which you might encounter. Okay, so white will start off with d4, the second most common move in chess, and you're just going to play your pawn out to d5 here. Pretty standard stuff, it's a queen-pawn game. And now if your opponent goes for the Queen's Gambit, you can now go into the Semi-Slav defense. There is a variation with c6, which is called the Slav defense, which I'll do another video on, but it's actually a completely different opening. But this one with e6 defines the Semi-Slav. So instead of actually taking on c4 and having a pawn there, you're actually maintaining the tension on d5, and you'll see a lot of tension build up over the next couple of moves. So your opponent's most likely going to play his knight out to c3, further attacking d5, and you're going to bring your knight out to f6 defending. And then your opponent will play his knight out to f3, similar development move again, and now you're going to bring your pawn up to c6. Just adding further protection to the d5 square, and this is the main line Semi-Slav defense. So let's look at what both sides have. Both sides have, well, white's got 2 knights developed, and black has 1 knight developed. Both have pretty good center control. Black has made 3 pawn moves, and white has made 2. And black has this very steady pyramid shape, which clearly signifies he's going to hold on to the d5 square unless he takes on c4, which is actually in some of the variations. Okay, so what you may see here is you may often see that this bishop from black often struggles to come out, but this isn't really a weakness because the opening has so many great benefits, so this is a very minority. Being probably the bad bishop for black, this is probably the slightly better bishop in the start of the game. It doesn't really matter. To be honest, you don't really need it for the opening of the game. Also, white, he has this bishop blocked in at the moment, and if he ever chooses to move that out with e3, he will block in his other bishop. So both sides having slight problems with their bishops, as it is already a pretty closed game, but you'll see what happens in many of the variations. So there's 2 main variations which you will see, which I will go over. The first one, which is the main line, is pawn to e3. Now, pawn to e3 is a simple development move from white, and basically what this does is it opens up the access for the bishop on the king side, as white will be looking to castle there, and also it defends the c4 square. So, for example, if white made another move, such as bishop d2, something dubious like that, then white will just go ahead. Sorry, black will just go ahead and take, and after e3, then white is automatically down a pawn, something silly like that. But in high levels of play, you're not likely going to see something like that. You're probably going to see this move pawn up to, sorry, not bishop d2, pawn up to e3. So basically, what this does is it, as I said before, brings out the kingside bishop. From here, a pretty good move that I would recommend is just to bring the knight out to d7, whilst white is busy making pawn moves. Develop your other knights, and you'll notice that white and black, again, pretty equal, both made 3 pawn moves and brought out both of their knights. And this knight is very useful out on d7. Obviously, it can't come to c6, but you can support it. c5 pawn pushes, e5 pawn pushes, to try and take center of the board. And this knight is a real lever to come out to the king side or out to the queen side in any matter of time. Okay, so what you may see here, the main line, it goes as follows. There are another 2 main moves which I am about to cover. One of them is bishop out to d3, which is again the main line. But what I like to play here, there's a little line which I'll show you, which you actually find very useful in helping to get your bishop out and take control of the queen side. It's just now in order to take on c4. And you'll notice when white recaptures that white has already moved this bishop twice. So if we just go through that again, he moves the bishop, he moves the bishop once out to e3, and then he has to move it again out to c4. And after you play your pawn up to b5, you notice he has to move the bishop yet again, and now this bishop is moved 3 times, and after several development moves such as bishop d6, also a6 is good, just solidification now. You'll notice that white's moved his bishop 3 times and lost quite a bit of a tempo, whilst black has just been developing a strong attack on the queen side. The other variation which you may see, if white would not want to go down that route, is just play queen to c2 first, and you'll notice if you do go down this variation, when white does move his bishop back to b3, white has an extra move. White now has the queen on c2, and that's why he made his queen to c2 move. Obviously, I wouldn't recommend taking this position just because it gives up the d5 square for no reason. So you can just play your bishop up to d6, and then you probably see this bishop d3, castles kingside, and now both sides are going to have a very comfortable game. Obviously, it's black's move. So, you know, what I think that white has no real advantage here, which is a good achievement for black, you know, on this was move 8, just to not have a big advantage whatsoever. So there's another variation which you may see, which I'm now going to go over now, and that is the bishop coming down to g5. Obviously, the main idea of this is with this move e3, this bishop is really blocked in on c1. If we just go back and move to the e3 variation, you will see this with e3, this bishop can no longer come out to a nice square. So the idea with bishop d5 is you play your bishop out to the other side of the pawn chain before actually playing your pawn to e3. Now there's a few different moves which you can play in this position. 2 of them is definitely better than the other variation, but I'll show you all 3 just depending on the style of play. Quickly, the variation which I don't think is very good is basically the pawn to h6 variation, as this just allows white to take here, and after you recapture with your queen, then white can play the pawn to e3. His bad bishop is gone, removed, traded off for a knight, and if you look at white now, he's developed 2 minor pieces, and all you've developed with your queen is actually a bad idea, because in the opening the queen should not be out, as it can easily be attacked. So that's a variation I do not recommend, but there are 2 other good variations which will be very good for you depending on your style of play. One of the most exciting variations, and one which I play quite a bit, probably my second favourite variation, is just actually taking the pawn on c4. And you'll notice that white has sort of offered up a gambit in this position just because he can't actually win back that material immediately, but at the same time, the consequence of this is you have opened up the d5 square to be controlled by white, and now white can play his pawn out to e4. Also, it's attacking the bishop, but after this you can play your pawn up to b5, and effectively what you've done is you've won a pawn in return for a slight lack in center control. You definitely have control of the queen side. It doesn't look that great well, it doesn't look brilliant from the white perspective, but it's definitely not a total disaster on center control. You may see a variation such as e5. Obviously this knight is pinned and it can no longer move, so from here you can attack the bishop, and you can get some really interesting plays such as this. The bishop goes back, and you get a very dynamic game. Very dynamic indeed. But it's a very nice, exciting line to play. But the one I actually recommend, a much more solid line, is just to play knight out to d7. This move does a couple of things. First, it allows this pawn thrust up to c5, but secondly, if white now takes the bishop, you don't have to take back with your queen. I would mention taking back with your pawn is kind of bad, as you would want to castle on the king side in this position. Taking back with your pawn, you know, kind of after you get your bishop out, this g-file's opened up for attacking chances. But anyway, you can take back with your knight in this position, and I really do think that black has an advantage in this position, just because black has the bishop pair. It's going to easily be able to open up this board, and it's just going to be very easy to attack. Also, white wasted a tempo by moving the bishop twice in that last variation. So that was pretty much the semi-Slav defense. I will do another video on the Slav variation, which is a slightly different opening. But I hope you guys enjoyed it and you learnt a lot from it. And I wish you good luck playing it. It's if your opponent plays the initial move pawn to d4 and then plays the queen's gambit, you're most likely going to see these knights come out to these 2 squares in that order. Alright, so thank you very much for watching, everyone. I've been KnightFighter22. I wish you good luck playing chess, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye, guys.